In life, there are countless moments when we feel like we are living someone else's life. The decisions we make, the beliefs we hold, and even the desires behind our actions may not originate from the deepest part of who we are, but rather from the expectations and conditioning of the world around us. In reality, many people never realize they are living according to a script written by society, their family, or external influences. They simply follow preset rules and never question whether these things truly align with who they are at their core. Human identity is not only formed by individual decisions, but is also profoundly shaped by social, cultural, and familial influences. Recognizing this can lead us to feel lost, as though we have lost our freedom and authenticity. The realization that our lives may be nothing more than a shadow of others' desires, a mask we wear to fit in, can be both disorienting and hollow. This leads to the question, how can we rediscover ourselves when our lives aren't truly our own, but are shaped by the expectations of others? It is a difficult question, but also the first step toward embarking on the journey of self-discovery. To truly rediscover ourselves, Carl Jung emphasized that each individual must confront and integrate their shadow. The shadow represents those aspects of ourselves that we reject or refuse to acknowledge. These elements can be our fears, unmet desires, and even untapped potential. Jung believed that these parts of ourselves do not disappear simply because we refuse to look at them. On the contrary, they operate beneath the surface, influencing our thoughts, actions, and emotions unconsciously. When we feel disturbed by someone without understanding why, it could be a reflection of our own shadow, those aspects we have not accepted or wish to avoid. Jung did not believe that eliminating the shadow would help us grow. Instead, he argued that integrating and accepting the shadow is the key to self-discovery. The parts of ourselves we reject are actually the missing pieces to our wholeness. Confronting the emotions and thoughts we have long suppressed will unlock a profound source of personal power and authenticity. This process helps us become more genuine, not by becoming someone entirely new, but by becoming the truest version of ourselves. By facing and accepting the darker aspects of ourselves, we no longer let them control us. Instead, we use them as a powerful tool for growth and evolution. Carl Jung believed that the search for one's true self is not about creating a new identity, but rather about exploring and integrating all the parts of oneself. Jung referred to this process as individuation, which is the psychological development and discovery of the whole person. To achieve this, one needs to confront the darker aspects of themselves that have long been pushed aside or denied. These parts are not our enemies. Rather, they are essential pieces of who we are, elements that can bring strength and freedom once we understand and integrate them. This touches on an important aspect of personal growth, accepting what we have rejected and learning to acknowledge the aspects of ourselves that have yet to be explored. The emotions, beliefs, and actions we once avoided are not things we need to run from, but are things we need to face with curiosity and acceptance. The integration with oneself begins by shifting our perception of who we are, understanding that a person is not a static entity, but a process, a continuous movement. Confronting oneself does not mean we need to change everything, but instead to illuminate the hidden elements of our soul, to live more authentically and holistically. This process requires perseverance and courage. We must be willing to face discomfort, step out of our comfort zones, and embrace the unknown. However, these very things will lead us to a more fulfilling and meaningful life. Only when we accept and integrate all parts of ourselves will we truly be free, not controlled by external influences that we may not even be aware of. Carl Jung believed that within every individual exist archetypes, ancient psychological patterns embedded in the collective unconscious of humanity, shaped by the experiences and lives of our ancestors. These archetypes not only influence how we act, but also shape how we perceive the world and our relationships. For instance, the hero archetype in each person is the part that longs to overcome challenges, grow stronger, and become a better version of oneself. However, this archetype does not exist in isolation. Behind the hero archetype is the shadow, the parts we reject or push away, such as fears, weaknesses, or imperfections. Jung argued that true change does not come from abandoning these parts, but from integrating them into our lives. The aspects we avoid often hold important lessons that can help us grow. In fact, the struggle between the hero and the shadow within each of us is one of the deciding factors in personal development. We must face our shadow, not just to avoid pain or fear, but because in it lies the opportunity for self-discovery, growth, and living more fully. Jung referred to this as the process of individuation, the ongoing journey each individual takes to integrate all parts of themselves. Each time we face and accept our shadow, we not only find strength, but also the ability to build a fuller life, living authentically. In reality, these confrontations with our darker side are the path to enlightenment and maturity, helping us lead a richer and more meaningful life. Carl Jung believed that in order to understand and develop ourselves, we must become aware of and accept the parts of ourselves that lie hidden in the unconscious. In this process, archetypes play a crucial role because they not only influence how we act, but also determine how we perceive the world and our relationships. Archetypes such as the hero, the shadow, anima, the feminine side in men, and animus, the masculine side in women, are essential in the journey of self-exploration. These archetypes help us confront deep emotions and suppressed desires, and they also open up opportunities for growth and integration with our true selves. When we face and integrate these archetypes into our lives, it is not only about recognizing the unrefined parts of us, but also about mastering ourselves and achieving psychological freedom. For example, when we face the shadow within us, the emotions, vulnerabilities, or fears we've suppressed, we are not only liberated from these barriers, but also empowered by the very parts we've rejected. In this way, we can develop a fuller life, living authentically without fear of judgment or being bound by societal archetypes we've accepted without questioning. Jung argued that the process of individualization is not about finding a new person, but about accepting and integrating all parts of ourselves, from the brightest elements to the suppressed shadows. It is by confronting and accepting our shadows that we can find true strength and maturity. This requires facing parts of ourselves that we have long rejected. But by accepting these aspects, we can reconnect with our true selves and live an authentic, fulfilling life. Jung also pointed out that fear and hesitation are the greatest barriers preventing us from seeing our true self. These fears are not something external, but are emotions we have denied and tried to avoid over the years. Instead of running away from them, Jung encouraged us to face them and resolve them from within. Facing ourselves authentically, without avoiding any part of us, is the only way to step out of the shadows of expectations and build a life that is truly free and unbound. In the journey of self-discovery, one of the most important lessons Carl Jung provides is finding harmony between the light and shadow within each individual. According to Jung, everyone carries both positive and negative qualities, those we are proud of and also aspects that we feel ashamed of or reject. Jung referred to these parts as the persona and the shadow. The persona is the outward mask we build to align with societal norms, while the shadow represents the parts of us we suppress, emotions, thoughts, and desires that society or we ourselves deem unacceptable. Jung argued that to truly live fully and find freedom, we must accept and integrate both the light and shadow aspects of ourselves. By confronting our shadow, we not only recognize our weaknesses, but also discover hidden strengths we have never acknowledged. The fears, resistance, and guilt we feel are signs of our shadow self. If we try to Jung also emphasize that accepting and integrating these archetypes is not an easy process, as it requires individuals to face fears, pain, and things they have avoided. However, it is precisely through accepting these parts of ourselves that we find maturity, growth, and the ability to live in accordance with our true nature. This journey, according to Jung, is the only path that leads to true freedom and happiness. In the journey of self-discovery, one of the most important things Carl Jung emphasized is facing and accepting one's true self. To achieve freedom and happiness, we must liberate ourselves from the constraints that society and external expectations have imposed on us. The self that we often present, which Jung called the persona, is merely the outer mask we create to fit societal norms and to be accepted and loved. However, when we become too identified with the persona, we gradually lose touch with our true essence, leading to feelings of emptiness and the lack of real freedom. Jung argued that the process of individualization is not about finding a new person, but about accepting and integrating all parts of ourselves, from the brightest elements to the suppressed shadows. It is by confronting and accepting our shadows that we can find true strength and maturity. This requires facing parts of ourselves that we have long rejected, but by accepting these aspects, we can reconnect with our true selves and live an authentic, fulfilling life. Jung also pointed out that fear and hesitation are the greatest barriers preventing us from seeing our true self. These fears are not something external, but are emotions we have denied and tried to avoid over the years. Instead of running away from them, Jung encouraged us to face them and resolve them from within. Facing ourselves authentically without avoiding any part of us is the only way to step out of the shadows of expectations and build a life that is truly free and unbound. In the journey of self-discovery, one of the most important lessons Carl Jung provides is finding harmony between the light and shadow within each individual. According to Jung, everyone carries both positive and negative qualities, those we are proud of, and also aspects that we feel ashamed of or reject. Jung referred to these parts as the persona and the shadow. The persona is the outward mask we build to align with societal norms, while the shadow represents the parts of us we suppress, emotions, thoughts, and desires that society or we ourselves deem unacceptable. Jung argued that to truly live fully and find freedom, we must accept and integrate both the light and shadow aspects of ourselves. By confronting our shadow, we not only recognize our weaknesses, but also discover hidden strengths we have never acknowledged. The fears, resistance, and guilt we feel are signs of our shadow self. If we try to discard or deny these parts, we will never achieve inner harmony. In fact, the shadow holds the key to our growth. When we learn to accept and face it, we become stronger and more complete. However, doing this is not easy. We must face uncomfortable feelings, fear, and shame when exploring these darker parts of ourselves. The key is to move beyond this fear and understand that maturity comes when we learn to love and accept all aspects of who we are. It is through facing and integrating our shadow that we can step beyond the persona created by society and live an authentic, fully realized life. In life, many people live with illusions about their own identity, believing that they are separate beings limited by past events and current circumstances. However, according to Carl Jung, the self is not a fixed entity, but rather a part of an ongoing process of development and evolution. Jung argued that we are not isolated individuals, but part of a larger collective consciousness, encompassing the memories, emotions, and experiences accumulated over generations. Jung used the concept of the self to refer to the totality of a person, the true self, which goes beyond what we see in the mirror. We are not just our experiences, the relationships we have, or the successes and failures we have gone through. The self is an infinite structure that can extend beyond the boundaries we often set for ourselves. Jung emphasized that the process of individuation, the development of the self, is about surpassing the limits of the small ego. It's not about becoming someone else, but about discovering the completeness and wholeness within oneself. On this journey, people often encounter barriers created by the illusions of the ego they have built. These limits are not just walls we construct from our beliefs, but also the masks we wear to conform to societies, families, or external pressures' expectations. These very things create a disconnect between our true selves and the identities we present to the outside world. Jung suggested that in order to break free from these illusions and attain true freedom, we must abandon the preconceived notions and stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and instead learn to live authentically with ourselves, free from fear and societal expectations. The important message from Carl Jung's lesson is that finding yourself is not about creating a new identity, but about discovering and integrating the parts of yourself that have been left unexplored. In life, we are easily swept away by the expectations from society, family, or the illusions about ourselves, without realizing that our true self is much broader than what we see. To achieve true freedom and happiness, each person needs to break through the limits they have set for themselves, abandon social masks, and live authentically. We must confront the aspects of ourselves that have been repressed, whether they are fears, emotions, or hidden desires. When you do this, you not only discover your true self, but also open the door to a life full of meaning and freedom, no longer bound by external expectations.